This is the Wabash Carnegie Public Library Oral History Program.
Now, what are you going to see at the public library?
With Hazel Vera, Amber Stone, being interviewed at Miller's Mary Manor, Wednesday, October 15th, 1975. Okay, now, Mrs. Stone, the first question I'm going to ask you is when and where you were born and who your parents were.
When I was born, I was born 1889, January the 28th, and at, what did you say, east of Urbana, or west of Urbana, about 2.5 miles. And my parents was Simon Amber and Carolyn Amber.
Mm-hmm. What was your mother's maiden name?
Gurtner.
Gurtner? And tell me about your parents and what they did and where you fit into the family and so forth, and what your dad did and so forth. Tell me about your family and your early life, just like you were writing a letter.
Well, my father and mother lived on a little 40 acres, and then after so long a time, my father's health failed.
You got back from wherever you were. So
my father's health failed, and they moved to Urbana.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother and father, they run a hotel and a grocery store at Urbana.
Mm-hmm. How large was this farm, and how did they come to have a farm?
Well, it was only a little 40 acres, but it was very good, very good.
Mm-hmm.
And
what did they raise?
well, it was just like any other farmer. They had the main thing that my father had Poland's China hogs. That was the main thing.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Tell me the story about how we lost the farm or lost the
Well,
cow.
my father had rheumatism.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a wheelchair for about 10, 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, his health had failed and he couldn't walk, and so they thought best for him to make the change. And my mother didn't want to leave, but after that, she was very happy with us being in the hotel at Urbana and happy being there.
What was the name of the hotel, and what did it look like, as you remember, the number of rooms and the people that stayed there and so forth?
Well, I imagine there were 12 probably rooms in the hotel.
Mm-hmm.
And do you want me to tell about my mother not wanting to serve?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
She said that she wouldn't go there unless they would just serve things family style.
Uh-huh.
And that's what a lot of the salesmen that came there liked, was because she served it family style.
Mm-hmm. Did they make any money out of the hotel?
Well, I couldn't just say about that, but then they made a good living there. It was a good living.
Yeah. Do you remember your grandparents?
I remember my grandmother and my grandfather, Amber,
Mm-hmm.
but I never some of them on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm.
They were from Switzerland,
Mm-hmm.
and all of I think my mother was the only, there was about a family of 6,
Mm-hmm.
and my mother was the only one that was born on this side.
Mm-hmm. But they were all gone on your mother's side before you came along.
No, I remember 2 of my uncles and an aunt on my mother's side.
Mm-hmm. Could you describe for me what your grandparents looked like, Grandpa Amber and Grandmother Amber, and what they looked like and what they dressed like? Let's start with Grandpa. Did any of your children look like Grandpa Amber?
Well, no, I don't believe they do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe so.
Mm-hmm. Was he a big man or a small man?
He was rather tall,
Mm-hmm.
but I remember him as a very, very good man. Never said anything harmful about anybody, but I couldn't say that from my grandmother.
Yeah.
But my grandfather just seemed as though everybody just loved him.
Uh-huh.
Robert Amber.
Yeah. In your own family, your mother and father, how many children were they? Your brothers and sisters?
Six. There were six of us.
Yeah. And where did you fit into the family?
Well, I was third to the youngest. I was baby for 12 years, and then I had a sister, Velma, was one, and then my sister, Virgil, and 2 more years, sister Virgil.
And what age span was it in from the oldest member of the family to the youngest? How many years? Quite a few?
Yes, there was quite a few there.
Now tell me about your brothers and sisters, starting with the oldest one and what they did and where they went and what their career and lifestyle was.
Well,
let's start with the oldest member.
My oldest member was Daisy, but she passed away very young, about 22.
Were you alive then?
Oh, yes, I was alive then.
What did she do? What are the circumstances of her death? What happened to her? Diphtheria?
It was childbirth.
Yeah.
And then, what you call it, then my brother, I suppose about 2 years, my brother was born. And then since that time, I have my sister Mamie, who's been passed away about 10 years ago. And then I still have Velma and Virgie still living.
Yeah.
Two sisters.
Yeah. What was it like in your home with your mother and father? And did your grandparents live close and so forth?
About a half a mile.
Yeah. Did you see them often?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. What was the house like, and how did you heat it, and what did you eat, and what did Mother do? And
well, we were heated. The house was heated, of course, with wood at first. I remember how we used to keep a wood box behind the stove in the wintertime. We'd have to carry in the wood and fill the wood box, keep fire overnight, to keep fire overnight. That was down in the country.
What was Christmas like at home?
Well, we didn't have Christmas like we have it now. In our home, we generally had, we get something for Christmas, but then it would generally get some kind of clothing or something. But they'd always do, we had some toy. Of course, mine was generally a doll.
Did you have a special meal that day?
Oh, yes, very special, very special. And generally, we'd get together with either my father's folks or my mother's folks on Christmas Day, you see.
On Christmas Day?
On Christmas Day.
Yeah, and have a big meal?
Yes, have a big meal.
Did Grandma and Grandpa bring you maybe a candy or an orange?
Or at Christmas time, I can hardly make my children believe it, but it was a great treat to us to have an orange at Christmas time. Of course, apples, we had apples, but then it was a great treat for us to have an orange on Christmas. And at our programs at the church, why, that was one thing that we'd have, especially, we'd have an orange in our sack of candy, and that'd be a treat to all of the youngsters.
Tell me about going to school and where you started the first grade and what kind of a school it was and so forth.
Well, I started at school just a little young, a year younger than I should have. My sisters took me to school one afternoon with them, and when I wanted to go back the next day, I liked it so well, I wanted to go back with them the next day. And my mother thought, no, she's too young, she can't go. So when my brothers and sisters went back, told them that I wanted to come back, she said, well, let her come. We weren't particular in those days. So I started to school even younger than what I
what year
would have otherwise.
What year would that have been? Just take the year you were born and how old you were.
It was 1889. And I started when I was about 5, I think, about 5 years old.
So it would have been 1894.
I graduated when I was 17.
You graduated from high school. Yeah.
From high school at 17.
Now, was this a one-room country?
And the one at the high school?
No, the grade school.
Well, the grade school was one-room school, that's right. That's right.
And
we had a bucket of water. Everybody drank out of the same dipper. Just a dipper down wouldn't do now, would it?
No, it wouldn't. Who was the teacher? There must have been some teachers that made an impression on you over the years.
Will Lance was the first teacher that I had. Will Lance.
And all 8 grades were in the one room.
Yes, that's right. But now I had during that time, my folks had moved, and I had gone to 2 schools, but they were just one room schools.
Yeah, what were the names of the schools? Do you remember the names of the schools?
The one was Hackacre was the one, and the other was I can't say that, but I think.
Yeah, well, we can correct that when we type this out, and then you'll look it over, and you'll probably remember the name of it. Well, from grade school, then, where did you go after you finished?
Urbana, to high school. We go, my sister and I go 2.5 miles.
How?
Horse and buggy. At first we unhitched our own horse. And then later on, there was a sale barn there. A livery barn, I suppose they called it then.
Yes.
And they'd charge 10 cents a day for taking care of it. Unhitching the horse and hitching it up for it. So we paid 10 cents a day then for taking care of our horse.
What would you do when the weather was bad, like a snowstorm?
Well, we just had the curtain across the front of it, and whatever these bricks and put parts of our feet. It was real cold.
But you went snow or rain?
Oh, yes.
Did you have good attendance through high school?
I say so, yes. Very good, very good.
What did you study at Urbana? Well, this was at Chippewa or
No, Urbana.
Urbana. And what did you study?
Well, I had algebra, Latin, English, and history.
And were there any teachers that made a big impression on you?
Yes.
Who were they?
Burke, Mr. Burke, and Mr. France. He was from North Manchester. Burke, I think, is from Bedford.
And they made a lasting impression on you that you can remember?
They both did.
Even today you can remember.
That's today.
What did you do in the summertime in high school?
Well, we just still lived in the country, you see. And one of the things I remember the most was taking care of, we turned our cows out on the road for them to eat the grass to see along the road. And my sister and I, that was our job of the morning. And of course we helped with the chores. I never liked chickens, so my sister helped us with chickens, and I helped with the milk and the cows. We did housework and things like that.
But they were still running the hotel at the same time?
No, that was after. That was after this.
That was after this, later?
Later on, outside.
Okay, now you graduated from high school, and you must have been rather unusual because not many young ladies graduated from high school nowadays.
Well, after I graduated from high school, now my sister and I, you understand, graduated at the same time. She was in 8th grade 2 years, and I was in 8th grade 1. And we both wanted to go to Huntington and take a business course, but the folks couldn't see the same both of us. And so my sister wasn't very well at Michael's age. She was crippled from birth, and then got around into fitness. And I've never felt badly to think that she was the one that got to go because she was one of the servers. So I stayed at home one winter, and I thought, well, I just had to do something. And at that time, in fact, it was the last year that you could teach, if you could pass the examination, teacher's examination, you could teach without going to college. So I took the examination, passed it, and I taught 4 years.
Where did you go to teach?
At my home school 3 years. And then the last year I taught the 7th, 5th, and 6th grade at Urbana.
At Urbana. Did you find this much of a handicap, not having a college education? Or?
I often think about it now. I didn't think about it at the time because others did the same thing, you see. But I think about it now. I had one family, and Adam Miller Shelley, and they were so wonderful in art. It's always in every time, every drawing a picture. And I've often thought now it's so silly having had an art teacher like the students have today, like they might have done.
Okay, now we got as far as the art teaching. We got as far as the art teaching and so forth. Now tell me what happened. You were going to continue the story. We were talking about teaching.
Well, after I had taught 4 years, I married. I was 22, and I married Paul Stone. He was a teacher.
How did you meet him?
And I seen social at a Methodist church in Red Grove. And I was going to stay all night with a cousin of mine, Edith Miller. And we went to ice cream social, and of course we introduced things in that.
How long did you two go together?
Just a little over 2 years. From about January to... But we didn't start going together right then. But we started going together in the latter part of the year. Then in April 26th, when we married, a little over 2 years.
Where did you get married then?
We were married in my mother's home at Urbana, and just had my sisters and brothers, and my husband's sisters and brothers, and then my grandmother. She was 84, and I thought that was wonderful that she could do this. Never thought then that I'd live to be 85 now.
Yeah, that is interesting. Did you and Mr. have any problems when you were going together? Did you ever get mad at him or anything?
What?
What happened?
Well, he liked the horse race, and they did it the both days. And so he had a friend, they both had a pretty good horse racing. So one time, I had bought me a new coat, and so I was pretty upset. And so they were horse racing within the spring of the year. It was kind of muddy, and I got my coat all day. So I said, well, you can either quit the horse racing, or you don't need to come back to see me anymore. So I won't say he quit horse racing, but he never horse raced. So then I was with him after that.
What was his background? I mean, tell me who his parents were, and you meeting the parents, and if he had brothers and sisters in the family, and tell me all about it.
He came from a family of 8. And now I never met his father. He had passed away before we started going together. But he had a wonderful mother. My mother-in-law had a long time together. We never had any trouble at all. And he raised his 8 children. Well, at first, before his father passed away, they lived at Rowan and had a hardware store, I think it was, at Rowan. And then at the time of that is after I knew him, by his mother, they had moved to the country. He was sitting there in the country.
Did he have an education to teach himself?
Yes, but he had at that time, when he started, a year later, he had to have 2 years college work.
Certification.
Yes, before he could teach. And he was teaching out in the country, out west of Urbana. And so then after we were married, right, and he took my place. He didn't take my place, but he took the 7th and 8th grade in Urbana. And then from there, we moved to North Manchester. We had 2 children born at Urbana, Josephine and Robert. And then we moved to North Manchester. And he was a manufacturing teacher, taught at Chester, and then in North Manchester. So he decided he'd like to hold a principalship instead of being a manufacturing teacher. So after that, he had 5 children. Like he taught part-time at Central and went to college. And I said, that's it. all of us started he graduated in 23, and we moved to Wabash, and he was principal at the Linlawn School. It's the next city now, the main school. And we were there 19 years, and he passed away.
Where did you go to housekeeping now?
At Urbana.
Did you have a house?
Yeah, we had in fact, we had a dog before we were married.
How much did it cost you?
I think maybe about $600 or $800. About $600.
You bought the house?
We bought the house, that's right.
Is the house still standing?
It's still standing, that's right. It's still standing. Just like just a little top of the schoolhouse there.
Tell me about how he got sick. Did he get sick before he died?
He had diabetes and a little heart trouble. And we were at Halloween party at Linlawn. And I thought that night he seemed to be my youngest daughter had several of the girls home with us there all night. And we had so much fun together, and I thought he seemed much better that night. But at the close of the party, they had served refreshments. And he comes in and he said, Hazel, let's go home as soon as we can. And I said, well, Daddy, how do you mean we're going home? I said, you haven't even closed things up yet. And he never went home to everybody else to bless and everything been closed up. But I saw that he got in the car, went home, and he drove home. I didn't drive. But he didn't put the car in the garage, so I knew they needed to put it there. And I think he passed away about half an hour before we got in the house.
How old was he?
52.
52? Yeah, so you're left with a family?
That's right, right. But the 7 children, but the older ones were married at that time to Robert and Josephine and Jean. But when Mary Carolyn, I remember, she had that's the one that passed away now, before they died. And she had all the arrangements to be married, so she went ahead and was married in the high school. And of course her daddy was besides being a principal, he was a priest, was an elder, and from the Wabash Christian Church, and two little churches around and a silver priest. And of course he would have got married, but he didn't get to, and that was out of disappointment.
So you only had 3 children at home?
Yeah, yes, 3. And Betty was in college. The poor older children had graduated from Manchester College. And my husband had said one time, he didn't feel it was safe and he used to give them the money. If they didn't make use of a college education, they didn't make use of the money. And then he had anything left in our thought we were going to see if they all graduated from Manchester College. So when he passed away, that's all I could think of, and it was really one of the best things that happened, that they gave me something to do. And so, of course, at that time I couldn't teach because I didn't have that college education. So I left and lived in a college apartment. Those sisters lived in another house. And then Jim they had the upstairs, he and his wife had the upstairs, and he had the floor part. And after he left me to service, when I moved into the college department, he was there about 13 years. And got them all through college. All graduates from Manchester College. I worked in the college kitchen, because I couldn't teach them. I thought the girls needed education worse than I did. They didn't need it worse than I did, but then, you understand.
Yeah, it was the next generation.
Yes, that's right.
Next generation.
And so that's been, on the time last night, I think I've had 20 in my family that have been teachers.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, yeah.
And it must be about 10 years teaching now.
What did the salary scale range for your husband from his beginning teaching job until he was principal? It was very low, I know, in those days.
I think it was 2,000 when he quit.
2,000 when he quit?
But it was up in the didn't need to speak out, so I know it didn't need that anyhow.
And how about when he started? What kind of money did he make at the beginning teaching?
Well, I think he made around about 60.
That's about what you made?
Yes, that's right.
And that was for 9 months?
That was for, no, we didn't have 9 months.
You didn't have 9 months?
Oh, no, only about 7 months.
7 months?
Oh, 7 months.
Yeah. So, but was teaching considered a well-paid profession in those days?
I'd say yes.
Particularly if you buy a house for $600.
That doesn't seem possible, but then it wasn't very much at home. It wasn't a big place, but then it was the home. It was the home.
Yeah. Any interest in music or art or anything?
I took about, 2 dozen lessons, I guess, on the piano.
Did you?
Yeah, but nothing, no art, no. I've never been interested in art.
What was the medical, the doctors and so forth like when you were a child?
Well, at that time, they'd come in, stay half-hour visits. They didn't come about 5 minutes and they don't like it is now.
Yeah.
But they'd stay, come out and stay with us.
That's when you were a child?
That's when I was a child, that's right.
When you started do you remember the epidemic, the flu epidemic of 1919?
Boy, I do.
And what was it like? What do you remember? Anybody in the family affected by it? Or?
I had it myself. The bad.
And what happened?
And I don't know if I should tell you, but you know, I tell you.
Sure.
But I was pregnant at the time. And that I got a fine face.
It didn't matter.
No, not in the least. And I had it pretty bad.
Let me check this tape now, and then we'll turn it over.
Okay, let's talk about having children. I think that's always an interesting subject and one that you're very familiar with. Let's start talking about the oldest child and how the circumstances and where you had in the home or the hospital.
No, I had my first 6 children in my own home. See, 2 were born at Urbana, and 3 in Manchester. And then after we moved to Wabash, there was 2. And then the last time, when Barbara, our youngest, was born, I knew that my husband's school was out at that. By that time, it was the 4th of June. And that my oldest daughter, Josephine, and he could take care of the family and everything. If I was, the baby and I wasn't there. So the last time I was at the hospital.
Yeah.
And I think I was paying $4.50 for my room at that time at the hospital. And I thought, well, it was about the 5th day, and I was feeling so good, and I said to the nurse, I didn't see why I'm paying. I thought that was a lot, paying $4.50 for a bed when I had a bed at home.
Yeah.
And so when the doctor came in the next day, old Dr. Stewart, and I asked him why I couldn't go home, and he said, well, now that was on the 6th day. He said, since you're living right here in town, said, I believe you could go home. If you go home, then go and stay in bed most of the time. And now you see, now they go home about the 2nd day afterwards.
Did you have a midwife or a doctor?
No.
You were always
my mother and my husband were always with me beside the doctor.
And then they would call the doctor.
That's right.
When labor began.
That's right. That's right.
And did you nurse the children?
All my children.
You nursed them?
All of them. All of them.
You were long ahead of your time in those days.
They're getting back to that though now.
Yes, I understand that.
I was reading an article in the Reader's Digest just yesterday, where they think it's best if they would get back to the mother's milk again.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's with the last one I nursed part-time and most of the time, and then fed on the bottle maybe about once a day and then twice a day. So.
Yeah. Did you, when you started out, did you and the husband plan to have 5 children, 6 children? Just a large family or no family? Or?
We had planned to have a family, but then The first one, we thought we wouldn't have any more. We thought we'd had a hard time of it, but then I had 6 more after that.
Yeah, and it didn't make any difference.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Was there anything unusual about the birth of any of the children?
Well,
Usually there's always some little family story about when so-and-so was born, something else happened, or...
I hardly know what to do. It wouldn't happen that I couldn't tell you it.
Yeah.
I couldn't. If you could turn that off, could you turn it off a minute?
The next thing I'm going to ask you, what part did the church play in your life and influence on the children's lives and so forth?
Very much. The church had a great influence on all of our lives.
Uh-huh.
I've started when we lived out in the country. We just lived a short ways from this half-acre church.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, it was struck by lightning. It was burned down and never rebuilt. But I was in a little church. I've been superintendent and taught Sunday school class.
Mm-hmm.
And my father was janitor. And I remember they'd have in the wintertime revival meetings, and the church would be filled. People had to come, a horse and buggy, but the church would be filled. And we'd go down, and of course at that time they just had coal lamps.
Mm-hmm.
We wouldn't think of, we'd go down about an hour before and start the fire and have the church warm,
Mm-hmm.
But we wouldn't think of turning on the lights, coal our lights. It'd be too expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And as people gradually began to come, then they'd turn on another light, and
Mm-hmm.
time for church start with it. It'd be lit up and good, you see.
That would be sort of energy conservation.
But yes, that's right. But my father and mother they were janitors there for years.
Do you ever...
And I'd say the church has always been, after we were married, one of the things that I think my children all remember the most, and some of them still carry it out. On Christmas Day, we'd always read the Christmas story.
Mm-hmm.
And sing a Christmas song and have prayer before we give out the gifts.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice custom that they're
Yes,
carrying out.
that's right.
Do you remember any unusual storms that your early life or your young married life, any unusual snowstorms or high winds or anything that would have disrupted the life in the community for more than a day or two?
No, I really don't. But I'll confess, I never got worked up about a storm like a lot of people do.
Yeah, it didn't bother you, huh?
Not like it does a lot of people.
Yeah. How about the Ku Klux Klan? Now,
We were very much opposed to it
where?
because we felt like it was against the Catholics and against the Negro,
Uh-huh.
and we couldn't see that.
Yeah. Did they try to get your father
yeah.
to join, or your husband?
My husband, but then he couldn't see it. He
Yeah.
had no use for the Ku Klux Klan.
Well, I presume teaching school and everything, they were probably putting the pressure on him.
No, I never thought about that, but he just had no use for the Ku Klux Klan.
Do you remember of any of them doing any activities or anything around Urbana? Or
Well, we were living in Manchester,
Manchester.
at that time. Not too much, no.
Yeah.
I don't.
How about any of the grandparents or anything like that served in the Civil War that you remember? Them?
My grandfather, Amber.
Did you ever remember him telling any stories about the Civil War or his experiences or the reunions or anything?
No, I don't believe I can tell you anything there.
Yeah. What did you do for recreation? Did you have a hobby all these years, or was just child raising was your full-time occupation and hobby both?
That was, I guess, and seeing that they got to go to college and go to school, that was...
Would did you have any adult medical experiences other than childbirth? I mean, did you have good health all your life? Or
I had a gallbladder operation.
how old were you?
Oh, let me see. I suppose I was about, probably about 45, and I was 45. I was at the hospital a month. Was there about 9 days and had a back set. 1 week, nobody could come in with my husband.
Yeah. What do you think your best ability was, really? Other
mother.
than your mother?
Being a mother.
Being a mother.
Being a mother.
Yes.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah. I would have to add your outstanding sense of humor and disposition, which I think is just remarkable.
Mm.
Did you have any preferences or dislikes in food? Was there one particular food that you really cared for? Or like
Well, I think chicken is my
your specialty?
specialty.
Yeah. Any food that you really disliked? Like turnips or sweet potatoes or
No,
nothing?
no. I prefer some to others, but then I can eat.
You can eat them all. Did you ever travel?
Well, yes. Not extensive like my grandchildren are now.
Mm-hmm.
But after my husband passed away, and I was working at the college, and after they were all through college, I worked about 5 years, I guess it was. And in the summertime, then I would travel to see my children.
Mm-hmm.
One summer I was at Michigan, Wisconsin, down Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
I would go to visit my children wherever they were located, you see.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the airplane 7 times.
Have you?
I've taken 7 airplane trips.
Yes. Tell me about, you told me one time about your daughter that died. Tell me a little bit about her and about your
Well,
son-in-law's new wife and how
Okay.
your affection and so forth.
Mary was 45 when she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
It was cancer of the lung.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, she was loved by everybody.
Mm-hmm.
They had been in Iowa when they were first married. They had a church in Iowa. She married, by the way, Reverend Rosnoff Singer.
Mm-hmm.
And they had a church in Iowa. I think they must have been there about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then they moved to Ohio. I can't think of the name right now. But anyhow, they were in Ohio for about 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were at a church, at Donald's Creek Church of the Brethren at Napanee, close to Napanee, about 2.5 miles, when she passed away.
Mm-hmm.
They had been there about 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Did she have children?
They had three.
Mm-hmm.
And the oldest one married. He's in a good position in the bank
Mm-hmm.
at the Elkhart.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next, Ted and his wife have both been teaching now for about 5 years, but this year they have a new baby in there. She's laying off now.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, he called me long distance the other morning from the breakfast table to tell me about it.
Just to say
And-
hello.
Yeah, say hello. And the youngest son is a senior in Manchester College.
Yeah. Now, did he remarry?
But he
then?
remarried,
Yeah.
and he married a girl that, well, her husband and Marion Ross, they had all been good friends at college.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say, of course, nobody can take Mary's place, but nobody could be any better to me than they are.
Mm-hmm.
They're wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
They remember me at Christmas time and Mother's Day. I had a nice letter from Ross.
Yeah.
And nobody could be any better than what they are.
Yeah.
They're wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
By the way, they're in Pennsylvania now.
It's interesting, I think, as your family grows, you just look on the many pleasant associations with the children and the grandchildren.
That's what I've tried to do.
Yeah.
Tried to do.
Yeah. How about the Depression? Did that affect you much? The Great Depression of the 30s.
Well, it rather amuses me when I hear people talk about that, in a way, because at the time when my husband was going to college, we had 5 children,
Mm-hmm.
and he was just getting part pay, you see, at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think I remember that time as being hard about as much as it did when the Depression was on,
Yeah. I'll be darned.
because we had to. It took some, after having 5 children, and he just teaching part-time, you see.
Yeah. It took some doing.
It took, it really did.
Yeah.
It really did. but then I do it again.
Any changes that you've seen in your lifetime regarding society in general, or technology, or fashions, or morality, or unions, or politics, or health, or anything? Have you noticed any great change from being a young girl up to today?
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I haven't noticed too much, I guess. Now, I said a lot of women belong to a lot of clubs. You understand what I mean, things like that.
Yeah.
But I never felt I had time. I've worked for my family most of the time. You see what I mean? They've been my life.
Your main interest.
My main interest,
Yeah.
yes. My main interest.
Yeah. You seem to be such a satisfied person. Are you really?
Yes, I am.
Are you? You're not lonesome? Or?
No. I
You got me.
I've tried to have all through my life faith in God,
Mm-hmm.
great faith. That and I pray now that whatever is His will in my life be done.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't understand at first, my being 86 years old, and then I gone through the fire this last year.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like if God wants me, I'm ready to go.
Mm-hmm.
But if I have a mission here to still perform,
Then you'll stick
then
around.
I'll stick around.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll stick around.
Was it hard for you as a mother to see the children get married and start lives of their own?
Well, I remember when Robert, my oldest son, he went to Butler 1 year
Mm-hmm.
at Indianapolis. And that was the hardest when the first one, then I got used to it and didn't think too much about when they left.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't think too much about them.
Mm-hmm.
And the oldest, I think I told you this, Josephine and Hay, my oldest daughter, and her husband went to the Dells when they were married on their honeymoon. And I thought, well, why are they going away to the Dells?
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there myself 2 or 3 times now. And I don't think anything more about now when the children go crossed over in Europe, different places, than I did, I just don't think anything about it. It's just life.
Yeah. Do you remember your first automobile that you rode in, or the first automobile?
I
that
sure
you,
do.
What was it? What were the
It
circumstances?
was an old Ford, and it was before they had they just had side curtains on the sides,
Uh-huh.
And I remember we had to wear a veil. It was very windy.
Yeah.
And the first trip I had, I remember, was with my 2 cousins of mine, Jenny and Bert Breckner.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Chautauqua, Wabash.
Mm-hmm. And what was the Chautauqua program that night?
Madam Butterfly.
Madam Butterfly.
I remember the singing very much.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Beautiful, beautiful singing, Madam Butterfly.
Do you remember first telephone that you had at home?
Yes.
What were the
It
circumstances?
was where you had to crank it up, there was about 10 on the line.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any unusual people on the line?
Yes, we had a couple unusual people. They had a phonograph. And they would call everybody on the line and have them to listen, and they'd play a piece for us. No matter how you wanted to use the line, like
Yeah.
they had it in.
Did everyone have a phonograph usually in those days, or not?
Well, I don't think so. Not like they have TV now.
Yeah. Did you have one at home?
Oh, yes, we had one.
And that was I would imagine that was a big item in anybody's house to have a phonograph.
That's right.
That you'd
that's
crank
right.
up, and
Mhm.
nobody would believe you're listening to this
No.
today anyhow.
And then I remember, too, it was quite when they got to deliver the mail at the house, they had the rural delivery. That was quite
Before, how did you get your mail?
we'd have to go to Urbana to get it.
You have to go into the post
No,
office.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
But this was by horse and buggy, or was it by car?
A horse and buggy.
Horse and buggy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you remember radio, the first time you heard a radio? Or didn't that make much difference to you?
I remember one thing that's rather outstanding. I'll never forget it. it was a short time before my husband passed away, and it was King George, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
that was going to be on real early one morning.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband wanted the children all to be sure and hear that, and we got them up, but it didn't come through too clear.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't come through when we were disappointed that he wanted to hear that.
Well, they probably remember it also.
Yeah, that's right.
They probably would have rather have slept, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right.
How about television? Did that...
Just remember. I can tell you what the speech was. I have it afterward, and I wondered if it wasn't the same one. I said to the man at the beginning of the year, "Give me a light that I may tread safely in the unknown." He replied, "Put your hand into the hand of God. That is better than a light and safer than a known way."
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. When did you memorize that?
Well, one of the children gave me, well, it was a little pamphlet or book
Mm-hmm.
with the verses on for each day of the year,
Mhm.
and that was at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, well, that's lovely. How about, now we're getting on to television. You remember when you first saw television, or did that make much difference?
Well, it was quite a thing for the television when we had the television.
Mm-hmm.
And I often think of it now. We think, well, we must see the picture.
Mm-hmm.
Back where we didn't used to, we couldn't see the picture.
Of course, you can probably remember when electricity came to
Yeah, that's right.
replace the coal lamps and so forth.
Mhm, that's right. That's right.
Was that a big event, too?
That was a big event. Yeah, that certainly was. Certainly was.
And everybody around it probably only had 2 or 3 light bulbs in the whole house in those days. You had one in the kitchen, probably, and just a light bulb in the kitchen, maybe.
I don't really remember about that. It was just how we had it. I don't remember that.
Moving the plumbing indoors must have been an improvement also.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that was. That was.
What would you say, you're talking to your grandchildren, your young grandchildren, what would you give them some, I shouldn't say advice, I'd say suggestions or a little philosophy to your grandchildren that might listen to this someday?
Well, I'd say to have faith in God. To me, that's, if I hadn't had it, I don't know how that long.
I think that's very...
I've always had somehow that everything would come out all right.
Do you think we should surprise them? And here it is, October 15th. Should we surprise them and possibly wish them a Merry Christmas?
I think that'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful.
How would you say that then?
Well, I'd wish you a Merry Christmas.
I think that's fitting that we...
And I want your name now.
My name, I'm going to tell you my name as soon as we finish the tape.
You'll put it on that
Yeah,
tape.
I'll put it on
You'll
the tape.
You'll put it on
Yeah,
the
I'll
tape.
put it on the tape.
Okay, you do that.
Yeah. Anything else?
And tell them how wonderful I thought it was. That
I think this has been a great afternoon, you know. It's overcast, and it's been raining a little bit this morning
right.
after 2 lovely sunny days, and I think it's just filled the whole room here with sunshine.
Now, I might tell you this in addition to what I've told you. When my husband passed away, about a month before he passed away, he was sitting in the same chair. We had been to a funeral, and I asked him, after we got home, I asked him, I said, if we would have a death in our family, where would we bury?
Mm-hmm.
So he sat there, and I can see him yet. He said, well, half acre's good enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
That was where my mother and my father and had 2 sisters and brother, not a brother, but uncles and aunts.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the meantime, the cemetery isn't kept up anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And about 3 weeks ago, when I was pretty bad at the Wabash Hospital, they decided that we would change the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been taken from this half-acre cemetery that's right close to the church where we attended the early years.
Mm-hmm.
And we have taken it to the Oaklawn at North Manchester. And yesterday. No, Monday it was a pretty day.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter Miriam took me up to Manchester.
Mm-hmm.
And my sister Virgie or Velma at Urbana went with us. And of course I couldn't get out of the car,
Mm-hmm.
but I got to see where we will be buried.
Yeah, well, that's lovely.
And then she took me to see my sister,
Mm-hmm.
and took me back past where I had been in the apartment for about 14 or 17 years.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, I shed a few tears there.
I bet you did.
And then we went up past the college, drove up past the college.
Uh-huh.
Then we were going to see my minister, but we happened to see him out mowing his mother's lawn there at Overholt.
Yeah.
And then came back. And then went to the dairy bar and got us each one of the deli bar.
Well, you can't beat that, can you?
So I had a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah, well, good.
You don't have to put that last on if you don't want
No,
to.
that's already on there. And we're getting low to the end of the tape here, so I'm going to close this. And I want to thank you, Mrs. Stone, for a lovely afternoon. And this is George Dingledy, Wabash Carnegie Public Library.